So last time we sat down and spoke, we went over what it actually means to be ready to purchase a home. Today I wanted to go over how much you think a buyer needs to save before purchasing.
It's a fair question. In our market, the first-time home buyer price range is probably around $150,000. So if I were to kind of frame it back to you and say, "Hey, Kylie, with a $150,000 home, how much money do you think you would need to bring to the table?"
Yeah, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 20% for a down payment.
And you can always put down as much as you want on a down payment, but what I will say is it's not necessarily true. Sometimes we can actually get you into a home with no money at all, depending on the strategy.
And how do you do that?
Number one would be a USDA loan. So the USDA is a government loan. Well, USDA in general is a government department, but there's a loan known as a USDA loan through that department of the government. And that is a 0% down product that is to incentivize people to purchase homes in rural areas. Well, the cool thing about Effingham, Illinois, and every single town around here, we are considered rural areas. So we can use a USDA loan in town. It doesn't mean out in a cornfield somewhere. And then we can ask for seller concession to cover your realtor commission. We can also ask for seller concession to cover any closing costs that might come up. So realistically, we can get you that home for $0.
Okay, let's go buy a home. It's free. Let's go.
It's free. It's free. Let's go. Great point. It's free. Let's go. And that's really the energy I love people would want to come to me with. But you still do have to get pre-approved for that loan. So caveat, you're not buying all cash. Most people aren't typically as a first-time home buyer. So you're going to a lender and you're saying, "Hey, I heard about this really cool USDA product. I want to see if I can get approved to get that loan." You can actually go through USDA directly. There's representatives in every area. I think most realtors in this town probably have the USDA office rep in this town's name and number. I know I do. And I would just connect you guys and you would apply through the USDA. The cool part about going directly through USDA is you're going to get a slightly lower interest rate because it's an incentivization to do so.
So now that we have one example of getting into a home with no money or little money down, is there any other way that you could get into a home?
Yeah, and this is where I get excited. I personally started as an investor before I was an agent. And if there's one thing that investors are good at, it's being really creative on how to not spend money, their own money. Part one to that would be you could do a contract for deed directly with a seller. You can go through an agent to do this as well. Some people think you have to go directly to the seller, and how do you find those deals? But you don't know unless you ask. We actually have an option in all of our purchase contracts to put contract for deed into that contract. Now, a contract for deed is going to need a little bit more legal work with some attorneys involved, but we're able to kind of bridge that conversation. But what a contract for deed is essentially you go to, "Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, I would like to buy your house. I have not so great credit, and this is why. Maybe I went through a divorce, XYZ, it's on the up and up, but it's not quite good enough to get a loan," which don't just think it's not good enough to get a loan. Go get an answer from a lender because you actually don't need perfect credit. But there is circumstances in which this applies. But I don't really have great credit. Would you be willing to potentially sell me your house on payments, and in 2 years, I will go get a loan for not just the full amount you're asking, but for a little bit more than that, and then pay you off. It's called a balloon payment. The reason you're going to be able to do this is you're going to find a home that needs a little bit of work. You're going to put some elbow grease into it while you're owning it. And then when you go to get it reappraised in 2 years, it's going to be worth more than what you are going to owe that seller, hopefully by 20% or more. And guess what? You're no money out of pocket to do that.
So, what about this first-time homeowners loan?
Ah, that's another misconception. Usually, when somebody comes to me, a buyer, and they say, "Hey, I want to get a first-time homeowners loan," it's not really something that exists. What they're usually referring to is a FHA loan, which is another government loan product that is a Federal Housing Administration loan. I can see how people can look at that abbreviation and think first time homeowners because it can be associated with first time homeowners. A lot of first time homeowners use the FHA loan. FHA loan is typically 2.5 to 3.5% down. They even have one called the FHA 203K loan, which is actually a construction loan, which is another really creative way to get in with like no money down. You rehab a house, they basically put training wheels on it and teach you how to rehab they don't teach you to rehab a home. Let me rephrase that. They teach you how to curate a scope of work for your contractors in order to have a guided process through the 203K loan. Um, but yeah, it's Fair Housing Administration. It's a really low down payment type loan. Really great way to get involved. There's more regulations than if you could put 3.5%, 5% down and get a conventional loan. But cool thing about FHA loan, the last time I checked, your credit score only had to be around, I believe, 620 or so. So it's a pretty low credit score entry. That's not a perfect credit score. That's a fair credit score. And to be honest with you, a lot of people have fair credit scores to get the good standard. Like it's a lifetime journey, guys.
What does your credit? Is it all just fair credit, or do you need good or excellent credit to get these loans?
I would say fair credit will probably get the job done in most scenarios. Everybody's credit history is a little bit different, and a good lender is going to be able to help guide you through whatever that process may look like. But yeah, that's just getting with a good lender who can help guide you. And a good agent should have plenty of good lenders they work with. I know I have 4 lenders I'll send out almost every time. Whenever somebody says, "Hey, do you have a lender you recommend?" I said, "Here's 4 great ones."